I'm scared.
Me too. But we've had scarier periods in our lives, I think. Well, welcome again, Katie, that you're here. We have been meeting up on Skype every once in a while, which is stuff that had to do with the International Spiritual Emergence Network and stuff. But this is actually the first time we talk to each other live and really talk about the things that matter, which are not of an organizational kind. Isabel just said that I was doing a master's in religious studies or spiritual care, and I had one day I had to prepare a presentation in class, which I did about the so-called religious gap, or the religiosity gap, which is the gap in psychiatry between what a psychiatrist thinks that anomalous experiences are about, and what patients or experiencers think that they're really about, and about how scared patients often are in telling these stories to their psychiatrist. So the title was the religious gap. And just in the week that we had this, I had to do this presentation, your book came out. It was just that exact same week, so I actually put it as the conclusion of my talk. And that's actually when we started talking to each other. Because I read your book. And your book is about spiritual emergence, about what happens to you when you suddenly, your world is getting much bigger than it used to be, basically. The wonderful thing about you is that you had been working in psychiatry, I think as a psychiatric nurse, is that right? Or
I was never actually qualified. I've not actually said
you're not qualified. Well, you're not the only one.
I always say I've worked in mental health for 15 years because I knew I'd get in the door easier.
Yeah, pass mic. Yeah, that's only for translation.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yeah.
There's no,
You pass. Yes, pass it.
okay. Closer to each other.
Connect.
Is there a possibility for you to be on the stage maybe? Because yeah.
Look after the Sarangi.
I'm quite short. No, I was never actually qualified, and it's kind of been a bit of a ploy to say I worked in mental health for 15 years because I knew I wouldn't get in the doors if I didn't say that. So, but the reason I never actually went through with qualifying, I was a nursing assistant on acute wards, I worked in the social work field, and in the third sector for the last 10 years. But the reason I never qualified was because it just didn't sit right with me. I kind of thought about doing my nurse training, my social work training, and it felt like I just couldn't go through with it because it wasn't heart connected enough for me. It felt like a betrayal. There was too much bureaucracy. I wasn't able to connect with people in the way I wanted to, so it just didn't feel right. So.
And how did you actually end up in psychiatry as a profession? Because there must have been reasons for you to have a career or an unqualified career in psychiatry.
Marguerite, the psychiatrist, mentioned earlier about how we often identify as kind of carers for our parents, and that's kind of how my interest started. My mum had it was diagnosed with postnatal depression when I was born. She always said that it was a spiritual experience, but it was kind of disbelieved at the time. So she's been medicated and kind of within the system throughout my life. So I developed an interest in it, but it was more of, now looking back, I kind of used the excuse that I wanted to work in the system to find a way to help her. But actually now I realise that I was actually just running away from my own pain. If I identified as a professional in the system, it couldn't happen to me. That's kind of what I thought.
Well, you promised a candid interview, so I'm getting personal. If it's too personal, you will just not answer. So, where did that pain come from that you were running away from?
I mean, this is scary, and it's kind of why I wrote my book, was because I feel that, you know, to connect as human beings, we have to be vulnerable. We have to connect authentically, and it's the only way forwards. And if I don't do that, I'm being a hypocrite to say that that's all we need to do as human species. So that's kind of why I've shared my story so kind of openly in the book. My pain ultimately, kind of reflecting back now, was related to the shame of being born. I kind of had the belief that I didn't deserve to be alive because I felt like I was to blame for my mum wanting to die when I was born. I think that's kind of the crux of what it came down to.
So you went to work in psychiatry because you actually knew the risk that you were taking with being alive, actually. So there you were working in psychiatry, unqualified, but working nonetheless. Were you happy? Well, you've already said something about it. How did you feel during these, how did your feelings about your profession, that you work in psychiatry, how did that change? Or
I always felt like an imposter. I lived with a facade that I was coping, I was helping people, and I always kind of hid my own distress, and I used to feel like a complete traitor because I would connect more with the patients than with my colleagues, and so I was completely disassociated from who I really was when I was at work, because it felt like I was just living a facade, which was painful in itself. I had no idea who I was. I had a really weak sense of self.
And this facade that you had, what image was that projecting? So it was, you said it was not yourself, but what kind of image were you projecting?
I was projecting the image of someone who was always happy, always had a smile on my face. I was a coper, I was a carer. I gave myself away for my family. I would always be the rescuer. Whenever my mum had a breakdown, I would be the one that drove over to the hospital and dealt with everything. Lots of my family kind of buried their heads under the carpet and didn't deal with anything. So yeah, I was the coper.
And how long have you coped, and what happened then?
Okay, so I coped on the exterior, but underneath I was a very depressed child and adolescent. When I was 17, my mum tried to stab herself in the heart with a kitchen knife, which was kind of the point when I discovered that she'd had the breakdown when I was born. I'd not been told that until that point. So I kind of all started to become clear then why I was feeling the way I did. And I coped by kind of doing the things in life that I saw in society that I should do. I got married, I had the house, I had the car, I got the job, I kind of lived the facade. So that was the coper until I couldn't run away anymore. And when I was 32, I had a big crisis of my own and made a very serious suicide attempt. And that was the point that everything kind of shattered.
Well, I was just wondering if there was a certain event or occasion that sort of the coping didn't work anymore. What was there something leading up to that, or was it just gradual? Or?
I think it was kind of a gradual build-up, but I'd kind of tried to run away. I tried to find happiness externally for years, in getting married, in buying new clothes, in the usual things, having a bottle of wine, going for a run, feel good for a while, kind of feel good endorphins. And I decided to try and create a new life out of the rat race. I put it down to work. I wasn't happy with work, so I moved abroad, sold the house, kind of lived mortgage free, and when that didn't make me happy, it was like I was kind of searching for happiness, and when that didn't make me happy, it was like I realised that I actually needed to face kind of what was going on, and it was petrifying.
Petrifying to the extent that you actually didn't want to live anymore. But you're here. Something happened. Maybe lots of things happened. So, can you say petrified? Can you describe your feelings at that time, if there were any feelings at all?
Completely lost. Had no idea who I was. Felt like a complete failure, a fraud. All of the things that I'd been listening to my patients described as. So my kind of trained brain diagnosed me with everything that I'd kind of been trying to help people through, and that added to my sense of failure because I couldn't do it for myself.
So am I correct that you, in a way, diagnosed yourself as a psychiatric patient and stigmatized yourself with all these labels, so to speak?
Yeah, it was actually at the point of my awakening that happened. I don't know if you want me to kind of go on to that bit now, but yeah, because it's kind of related. I mean, I was diagnosed myself as depressed and kind of. I didn't have mood swings because I was so disassociated from emotion. I'd so repressed everything. I was just monotonous. I kind of just lived a very stagnant life. And then when I had my breakdown, which I now consider a breakthrough and the best thing that ever happened to me, my emotions were all over the place. Everything came bubbling up that I'd been repressing for years, or my anger, the anger that I disassociated from it, my mum trying to kill herself when I was born, and everything kind of came up, the rage, and that added to that downward spiral of my sense of self being kind of this awful person who didn't deserve to be alive. And then I used to run and to kind of avoid the issues, and then I got a knee injury and I couldn't run anymore.
Not run away.
I literally couldn't run away anymore. So I took up yoga and meditation, and I'm one of the lucky ones because it took about 2 weeks, I think, to have an awakening. So yeah, I was in the middle of meditation and I was feeling really desperate. I was still feeling kind of like, what the hell is life all about? It was total existential questioning. Like I went into meditation and said to the universe, what the hell is this all about? And I had a complete, the stereotypical sense of oneness. I am the universe, I am the Messiah. I am love. I lost all sense of fear, anger, and I lived in a state of bliss for 3 days, and I was having telepathic experiences, I was having conscious downloads, I wrote theories that I'd not seen before, but at that point my kind of logical brain kicked back in and the fear came back because I was working back in the system at this time. And I was absolutely petrified that someone was going to find out. And it was at that point that I was kind of swinging between diagnosing myself with psychosis, bipolar disorder, unstable emotional personality disorder, everything, because I was all over the place, to then going back outside of work and feeling like this is the most authentic me I've ever felt.
So your experience was at heart an experience of unity, of exceptional unity. I assume it was a very pleasant experience. Yet you became very frightened at a point. And what was the cause of that?
Yeah, I mean that initial stage was blissful, but the fear kicking in happened very quickly because I knew what would happen if I spoke about my experiences, having worked in the system for so long. So that's the irony, is I knew what not to say. That's why I never got diagnosed, because I knew what I shouldn't say. That's the only reason.
Okay, you realize that what you've experienced now, how that would be looked upon by others who would not have had this experience.
Yeah, I was determined not to go the same road as my mother, and I knew that if I sought help in psychiatry, that's exactly what would happen. So at that point I sought elsewhere, and I knew from my experience and one of the theories that I downloaded and written during those 3 days of unity consciousness, I knew there was another way. I knew there was a more empowering way of understanding what I was going through, and at that point I was synchronistically introduced to Catherine Lucas, so I discovered the Spiritual Crisis Network.
Yeah. Who's Catherine?
Okay, so Catherine Lucas is the founder of the UK Spiritual Crisis Network, and very significantly I wrote to them anonymously saying I worked in the mental health system and had these really weird experiences and I was really scared, and it was Charlie that responded to my initial request for help, and it was at that point that I was given the validation and the hope that I needed to go off and empower myself with information to transform my experience myself.
So one of the words you just used was validation. What does Charlie do when he validates you? Well, Charlie, knap een validator.
Well, sure, if you want.
Dear Katie, thank you so much for contacting the Spiritual Crisis Network. Gosh, it's been a really tough time for you. I can really feel, I can really understand how difficult this must be to you, but it's so brave of you to contact us, and a lot of emotional validation. Well, we've already had the 5-minute warning, so I'm doing the quick version. You're not alone. There are people like you also struggling, and people contact this network, and we want to listen, and there are a few support groups in there.
And that was really the turning point. It was all I needed. It was the research, exactly the research. It was like the peer, having a safe space to express what I was going through. Validation that my reality was my reality, and that it wasn't a broken brain or something else. So that was kind of all it took, really, to empower me to go off and learn what I needed to learn to transform myself.
We have to sort of come to a close, so I'd be very curious what kind of information was most useful to you, or what did you actually do that really helped you to manage this huge expanse of consciousness and get by in daily life?
I don't know how I can say this in 3 minutes, but so I spent 4 years researching into neuroplasticity. I did loads of affirmations to change my negative thought processes into positive. I looked at the body-mind-spirit connection. I learned that my nervous system was affected when I was born because my mum didn't soothe me. So I learned how to do mindfulness and kind of heal my own soothing system. And I threw myself, I had a new mission, purpose, and that was the thing that I'd been missing in life. And it gave me energy, it gave me excitement, it gave me hope for the future. And that's kind of what I've done ever since, is throw myself into this. and yeah, kind of know that this is why I'm reincarnated now.
So tell us in 10 seconds about this mission. A mission statement, I want.
Okay, got a few mission statements. So I volunteered with the UK Network, Spiritual Crisis Network for 4 years. And during that time we had lots of people writing in from other countries in the world, and I thought it would be amazing if there was more collaboration and an international platform where the spiritual emergence networks around the world had a higher profile and a more professional image within psychiatry. So I, with a colleague in Hungary, have founded the International Network, which Catherine actually started a couple of years ago, but it didn't come to fruition at that point. But so we have there are 7 networks in the world at the moment, and we're currently working with 4 more countries to develop new networks. We're developing guidelines for other countries in the world to start networks, and our vision is to have networks in every country in the world. And I'm just started a new human rights campaign called Emerging Proud, which is basically, I dream big and I want to create a political transformation agenda like the Black rights movement, the gay rights movement, but for people who experience spiritual phenomena, and normalise it in mainstream mainstream society, not just psychiatry. So to create a safe space within mainstream society for people to express.